It's a 5 o'clock stream, and I can promise you that the coincidence, although they are, of course, rare, is nothing to do with the fact that Noni Madueke has just been announced as an Arsenal footballer. This was just as I mentioned, a nice coincidence for this special episode of the Arsenal Transfer Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal Transfer Show special, where I am joined as usual by a fantastic guest. I'm very happy to be joined today by the man who speaks just as quickly as me, the host of the Arsenal Vision podcast. It's Elliot. How you doing, mate? You good? You well?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me on, Tom. It's really exciting to be here. It's a really exciting time to be on the 5 p.m. announcement of Noni Madueke. It's going to be great to discuss. Thanks for having me.
It's going to be really great, man. I really can't wait to understand what you want to talk about regarding that topic. So let's go straight into it. I can't do that forever. There's absolutely no way it's going to work. I mean, the last ad read you did on the Vision was particularly impressive.
Thank you.
So, it was very, very good. Very, very good. How are you? Are you good? You well?
Yeah, I'm good. I am well. I'm heading out to Singapore, and I'm excited to see all kinds of new faces that I haven't met before. It's always fun to, meet new members of the Arsenal community and just share some time together. That's not looking forward to the flight, but looking forward to being out there, looking forward to maybe seeing some new player faces as well. So yeah, it's going to be exciting. I've never been to Singapore, so very excited about it.
How long is the flight, out of interest?
Well, so the way I have to do it, I've got a 13-hour flight to Seoul, Korea. I then have a 5-hour layover at Incheon. I then have a 6-hour flight from Seoul, Korea to Singapore, which happens to be right at 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. local time, at which point I will get off the plane, go to my hotel, and I'm sure be told we'll have your room ready at 3 p.m.
Yeah.
And then a live podcast that night. So, yeah.
Fantastic.
Anybody who wants to know what I smell like after 26 hours of air travel, no sleep, please come to the live event on the 22nd.
Oh, please do, yeah. If you are out there, you're going to have an amazing time, of course. And it's been a little while since Arsenal's preseason has taken them further than the US. So maybe it's about time Elliot did travel a little further for one summer.
Yeah, I think it's only right.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about the announcement that has happened in synchronicity. Is that the right word? Synchronicity sure. With us going live. Of course, Noni Madueke becoming an Arsenal player. A transfer that has been a delight to all and in no way controversial whatsoever, right?
No way controversial. And I think it's funny because I just spoke to Clive about this, but I think ultimately somewhere between the initial hysterically negative reaction that never made any sense and some of the very positive enthusiasm, I think there is a place where I can comfortably sit, where I have some questions about the move and some serious excitement about the move, and I feel fine holding that sort of nuanced view. But on the day it's announced, I will say it like this for the purposes of the hype and the excitement. From a physical tools standpoint, this is the kind of player you want to acquire, right? A 23-year-old who has hit some of the fastest top speeds in the league, who stands 6 feet tall, who's an elite carrier of the ball, who takes good shots in good areas and has really solid underlying metrics that suggest maybe he just hasn't been properly unlocked by Chelsea. I would also note that when Chelsea looked their best last season, I think it was often because he was in the side. So, like I said, I have some questions about the move, but I have no questions about the talent. And gambling on talent, especially young talent, is, I think, always a reasonable approach.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think, the gambles you take on the older players, as Arsenal have done a little bit in the past, that haven't paid off, have been a lesson we've learned from. And so investing here in Madueke, a signing that I think in some ways divides people. I'm not talking about kind of the controversies around it and the online side of it, but the division in how he's viewed as a signing, because I almost feel like I'm in a smaller pool with my view of Madueke, because I read Tim Stillman's blog post on Arsblog today. And when I read the words on that, which is, I think, most of us would see him as definitely not being signed just to be a backup. I'm not saying that I think he's signed not just to be a backup, but I am wholly convinced Arsenal have invested £52 million in a player they view primarily, his primary utility will be as Bukayo Saka's number 2, in my view. I think he'll play in other positions. I think he'll play on the left. But in my view, they have invested that money because of the damage that Bukayo Saka's impact of his injury last season had on our title race. And the gap, of course, from Saka to whoever comes after him, and the kind of the youthfulness of Waneri, but the fact that they see him more internally than as an external player, we understand. For me, I am solely convinced that he is going to be, not solely, sorry, but wholly convinced that he is primarily being brought in, Elliot, to be that. But I sense from listening to what you've said in the past that you do view him as a player that will play a lot of other different roles as well.
I don't know. I mean, we don't know, right? I will point out, by the way, that like 52 million pounds is obviously a lot. But I've heard that the wages could be relatively low. Let's say he's on 85,000 a week.
Sure.
Instead of the 180 that you might expect a big forward signing to be on. Over a 5-year deal, that's 20 million pounds, 21 million pounds, right? So it is possible that the club looked at it instead of just as transfer fees, which is often all we talk about, and looked at it in terms of the total expenditure on this wide forward and said, the total expenditure, wages plus fees, this is a reasonable value versus, I mean, you look at a guy we definitely were interested in Bryan Mbeumo, 71 million pounds? I mean, whatever I think of Madueke, I think this is a better investment than 71 million pounds on Mbeumo. I do think that he has been brought in to be cover for Saka for sure. I don't think it, Clive has talked about this, and I think it's a really important point, though. Cover doesn't have to mean he plays League Cup. Cover can mean 55 minutes into a game when it's 2-0 to Arsenal. He comes on and our level doesn't drop, and he's able to make sure we get that game over the line. And Saka maybe starts 36 Premier League games or 38 Premier League games if we're lucky, but he doesn't have to play 38 90s. And I think that is certainly a possibility. I think he can play sometimes on the left. There may be times when we go 4-4-2 and Saka's standing next to Gyokeres and Nani's on the right. I mean, there may be all kinds of system changes. I think, it's important to remember that Mikel learned under Pep Guardiola, and Pep is constantly toying with formations and systems and approaches. So maybe Mikel has some tweaks in mind in ways that he can use Nani. Maybe Saka's going to move inside at times, and Madueke will play outside of him. So I think there'll be a lot of ways you can use a player like this. And ultimately, my thought on players is always going to boil down to this final point. If the player is fantastic, he will find a place to contribute to the team. Leo Trossard, even if you regard him as fantastic or just fine or whatever you think of him, Leo has played 3 different positions for Arsenal and been a really important acquisition for us. And that came in a window when we were looking at Mykhailo Mudryk. And I think we're all glad at how that played out. But I think Leo is a great reminder that you can buy a player who is talented, find different ways to use them, and they can be an important contributor to your team without having to know for sure, this is our nailed-on left wing star of the future, our nailed-on striker star. So based on his skills alone, Tom, I think we'll find ways to use him, and I think there'll be ways that he'll be very valuable for us.
Yeah, I was just trying to look up salary on Capo. Apologies, not exactly, but I think his weekly base was £50,000 per week at Chelsea. And you imagine that's gone up, with the signing. So
double it.
Even double is
Eddie wages.
Reasonable. Yeah,
you know what I mean. We were giving Eddie $100,000 a week, and Reece Nelson and stuff. So you're still paying him like a squad player, even if the fee is more than that.
We're basically saying that Reece Nelson's exit this summer just pays for Madueke. That's what we're saying.
I'm totally happy with that. And if Fulham want to give us £52 million for Reece Nelson, I think we should take it.
Indeed, yes. That I had a little, again, more on that Fulham are advancing on that side of things, but it looks like a loan again, which, considering he finished at the end of the season without playing because of an injury, why a club would obviously commit a sum to him right now without improving his fitness first. I understand why this is probably looking like, with 2 years left on his deal, of course. It does make sense. Obviously, the elephant in the room remains the fact that we haven't had the not official, because we know things are happening before they become official on the website. We've known about Madueke for ages before his announcement. The same goes for Mosquera, of course, who we expect to also be announced, who we'll come on to. But the elephant remains in the room, Elliot, that Viktor Gyökeres, who we expect to be an Arsenal player, continues to evade us the official, unofficial announcement online, the here we goes of this world, if you like. How are you doing? Because I feel like I have to ask every fan, how are you doing? Like, are you surviving? Is it boiling your brain at this point?
It's a bit of a weird one. Yeah. Right. Like, I mean, it's a bit of a weird one. I think it feels like if we really love this player and think he's the right player, arguing over the criteria for 7 million euros of add-ons seems a little strange. And it feels like we would just say yes because, you know, again, I understand I'm not going to win Negotiator of the Year award by saying just say yes to 7 million extra in add-ons in a deal. But if that's the difference between a player being with us for preseason and a player potentially missing the entire tour of Southeast Asia, where he can be unveiled to the fans and where he can meet his teammates and play in a lower stress environment, then yeah, I think it's worth it. Does it indicate a hesitance to do the deal? I mean, I can understand anyone who feels that way because I think it was pretty well reported that he wasn't our first choice. But what I do think is this is a player Berta has always really wanted and rated and believed is the right guy. He did in Madrid, and I think he does at Arsenal. I think he's convinced his colleagues at Arsenal that that is the case. And so my expectation is still that the deal will get done. My only hope now is it can wrap up in time for him to make it out to Singapore. I don't think he'll be on the plane on Saturday. I think we've missed that window, but there might be other planes going to Singapore. If he wants to catch my connecting flight out of Seoul on Sunday, he's welcome to join me in seat 47D, and we can fly that flight together. You know,
47 being the number of goals we hope he scores next season, of course. Yeah.
If it's 47, I'd be disappointed, but I'd take it.
If they all come from inside the D as well, that would be even better.
Well played. Well played.
That'd be quite the highlight reel of goals if that was the case. It's not a secret to say that I was very much more so on the Sesko train personally, and not in the sense of like there's two sides of this, and you had to pick a side, as Arsenal fans seemingly find themselves being herded like cattle into one or two categories on every topic that exists around this football club. I was like 60-40, like Sesko, Gyokeres. And I saw like if you're going to invest in a centre forward and we don't see either of the two that are there as kind of the Declan Rice-esque centre forward signing that solves all of our dreams, but both of them come with kind of doubts and question marks and things that we aren't quite sure about, but also plenty of potential upsides. I saw that investment in perhaps a younger player as maybe the more sensible pathway. For Gyokeres, how do you see it? Do you see it as Arsenal have just refused to pay the ridiculous fee of what RB Leipzig were looking for with Sesko, and as a result are going for the less expensive player? Or do you see that they genuinely look at him as a player that can be the solution to all of our attacking issues?
So first things first, do I believe that Gyokeres was our first choice? No, he wasn't. Because if he was, I think we would have gotten him sooner, candidly, in previous windows. I think it was pretty clearly reported that we had looked at him and we didn't think he was the guy. Now, that doesn't mean I don't rate him or I don't think he is the right guy. I think Andrea Berta has come in and maybe changed some minds. And I think that there's been some further looking into him, and he's been regarded as a good option. And I do think that the price is always related to the value of a signing. I think last summer there were prices like 100 million euro. If this lands somewhere in the 60 to 65 million euro range, that's a big, big difference. And suddenly you're looking at a player that if he shares time with Kai Havertz, that can work really well. You don't want to pay 100 million euro on a guy unless you're really convinced they are your superstar addition. I think with Sesko, I loved his physical tools. I mean, in a way, I think Sesko and Noni Madueke are similar in the sense that they haven't proven enough to me yet as players to know for sure they can be a star. But on a physical tools level, there's a lot there to like. I just don't think Sesko is a 90 million player. And I think RB Leipzig overplayed their hand. I think Sesko maybe wasn't as convinced that he should make the move as easy as he needed to. And I think they've wound up overplaying their hand, and now places like Saudi Arabia are being talked about for Sesko, which would be a shame because I'd like to see how he develops. My thing with Gyökeres is simply, I don't know that I believe he can be what he's been in Portugal, candidly. Like, I don't know that he's going to be a 25, 30 goal type striker for us. I do think we can observe that anybody who's played striker for Arsenal the last few seasons has found a way to score goals. And I think he can. The data that I came across recently, thanks to Scouted Football, and Billy Carpenter drew my attention to this, that I think was really encouraging is Gyökeres sort of led all of Europe's leagues, all the players in Europe, in terms of the number of top speed sprints per 90. Now, that might seem like a really weird stat to pick out, but I think the Premier League is increasingly becoming a league about sprint repeatability, a league about your ability to hit your max running power as much as possible for 90 minutes. And if people are worried about his physicality, I think that data, that he hits his top speed and sprints in behind more than any other player in all of Europe, that can really work for us. A guy who isn't just going to drop deep late in a game, want to receive the ball to feet and lay it off back to a defender or midfielder, but who's going to test the shoulder of the last defender. And we saw that firsthand in Lisbon, game that I had the pleasure to be at, a lot of fun, where Gabriel had come off. It was Saliba and Kivior. It's the 90th plus one or something. And there's Gyökeres running Kivior. And he beats him and he gets to the channel and he takes a rasping shot with, I think, his left foot that just cannons off the post. And that's in the 91st minute. If he can give us that kind of repeated running over and over and over again all game, I think that translates. And I one more thing. I'm sorry, Tom, but I have to say
no, you're fine, man.
I have seen the argument, oh, well, yeah, it's great watching him sprint in behind, but Arsenal only face low blocks. I get it, right? Low blocks have been a problem for us. But I think it is absolutely incorrect to say we only face low blocks. Arsenal do get transition chances in games. Arsenal do get counter opportunities. We are one of the top teams in terms of high turnovers. How often have you seen us have a high turnover and recycle the ball? Why? Because
Mika Marino's up there.
That's it. Exactly, Tom. Sorry, I know I'm dominating here. I apologize. But
no, you're fine.
In that minute turns the regain into an opportunity to run in behind and aggressively test the back line. And so I do think maybe it's only a handful of times a game, but those handful of times are important. And I think he will help us exploit those into better chances than we've done in the past.
Yeah, don't apologise for taking over. I think if people took bets for which two could do a 24-hour Arsenal podcast talking, I think we would pretty much have that covered, just us two.
Well, and I try to give Clive and Tim the room on my pod. This is my moment.
I'm giving you this platform. That's why I like going on other platforms, because I can talk a little bit more. But that's also why I do a solo show every single morning, so I can talk to my heart's content.
By the way, I got to stop you. Having opted to do a transfer daily all summer long, kudos to you for doing a solo show every day. It is yeoman's work that you do. You serve the community, and we thank you for it.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, I was wondering, because I obviously took a break in June, and I think you were doing yours then as well when I was in Canada, and that was the kind of the 2 barren weeks of nothingness. And I was thinking, I was talking to Georgia, just saying, I said I was really worried about not doing the show. I'm looking at the news every day, and now I wake up, when I was there, a similar time to obviously what you wake up when you're at your home and you have the opportunity to wake up, look at your phone and see 8 hours of UK time news in collation. And for 2 weeks, there was nothing for in that whole period. Yeah. And I can't imagine what that must have been like, but I was really...
A lot of parsing what monitoring means, what approaching means, what keeping an eye on means, a lot of that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So Mola says, the Arsenal Waffle podcast. Hey, look, it's just as good, and some might have a preference, as the Arsenal Pancake podcast, So it depends on which way you like. But yeah, it looks as though that he is most likely going to be on his way. And I actually think the most interesting player for Arsenal next season, as a result of Viktor Gyökeres' arrival, for me, is Kai Havertz. And seeing what he will do in this Arsenal team with arms the size of... He's basically got Big Ben on each of his arms now. I don't know if you saw the edit going around the social media.
Every picture that gets posted, his arms get bigger. There was a time there where people were using like a face fattening app on people, but someone's using the arms.
JD Vance, I think it got bigger slightly. His face just gradually getting bigger. And I can do that now. I'll see that with Kai Havertz's arms. Someone needs to do that. Every time there's a like on the tweet, is Kai Havertz's arms get bigger. But what do you make of the role that he now has to play in the team next season? With, you spend 50, 60 million pounds on a new striker, you expect them to start pretty much every game.
It's interesting. I mean, whatever you think of Kai Havertz, there's one thing that I don't think you can deny, which is the best Arsenal I've seen in 20 plus years was the Arsenal from January to May of the season before last, And Kai Havertz started as our striker in every one of those games. And we were singing a lot of who put the ball in the back of the net, right? Half the effing team did all winter and spring long that season. So I have all the faith in the world that Kai Havertz can play striker for Arsenal at the level we need. And I understand what some of the question marks are about Kai Havertz. I mean, I don't think he is the most clinical striker. I think that it's fair to say that. But he does so many important things. I really believe that fundamentally there's going to be opportunities for us to play in different ways. Kai and Gyökeres together. I think Kai can play the 8 again, and I know people don't love that, but playing it almost like a support striker with Rice dropping deeper. I'm really curious about that because Zubimendi, we expect him to start every game at 6. Rice, we expect him to start every game at 8. But that may not be what Mikel has in mind. If nothing else, we have the ability to try different things from game to game and in game. So I'm fascinated to see it. But I'll tell you this, Tom. If Kai Havertz started 38 games at striker for Arsenal this season, I have every confidence we could still go on and win the league. Now, I don't think we're buying Viktor Gyökeres to not start any games. But good for us to finally have options. Arsenal fans are weird, right? Because we want depth. And the minute we have options, then we shift to, well, who's going to play? What's going to happen to Kai or what's going to happen to Gyökeres? Yeah. You know what? Look at PSG. Bradley Barcola is a player I would take tomorrow at any price. He has to fight and scrape and claw a way back into that PSG team because of how well Desiree Doué played and Kvaratskhelia. So that's what you want. You want these players fighting their way in rather than just being presumed to be in. And I think Kai will find ways to get in for sure.
Speaking of fighting and scrapping and clawing, Hand of Arsenal's done plenty of that this summer to get the information out to all of us. So massive shout out to you, mate, and the work that you've done this summer for everybody, keeping as many people calm as you can continually. So thanks for the shout out. When it comes to the kind of where we go back from that and the formation of the attacking players, Arsenal have wanted, 3. They've wanted 3 attacking players. And listeners, I've held the walls at bay for 22 minutes before the 2 biggest Eberechi loving Arsenal content creators on the planet, united to talk about the player that they desperately want to see join Arsenal. You did text me, I'll reveal this, Elliot, that you did text me saying, is he coming? I did. I spent the day I spent the day with Ed Aarons today playing a bit of golf, and we did talk a little bit about Eze. He is slightly biased as a Palace fan, of course, but I think he's very hopeful that he will stay. I spoke to another Palace friend of mine who's again rather less confident that Eze will leave Palace. But these things change very quickly, and Arsenal, of course, need to move some players on, I think, to start opening the door to some later business. They've done so much already in the window. I said at the beginning of the summer, if Arsenal get 6 players, wow, brilliant. 6 players in a single window, amazing. And the idea that we could be getting annoyed about not landing the 7th, is obviously, it can easily be misconstrued as a little greedy. But Eze, for me, and I'm sure he is for you, I've heard you speak about him many a time, is up there, if not would be for me the signing of the summer if Arsenal can get it done. And the ironic thing about that is that he doesn't even have an obvious place in the Arsenal team if he was to arrive, because he can play in different roles and play in different positions and add competition to different roles. But Elliot, I'm not really going to ask you a specific question. I just want to hear you wax lyrical about a player that I absolutely love as well.
Yeah, all right. So a few things, right? I do love Eze, and sometimes it's okay to ignore age and data and this and that and positional fit and all that and just say, I adore watching this player. I love his talent. I love the fantasy element of his game. I love the way he shows up in big moments, what he did for Palace in the FA Cup, against Fulham, against Villa, against City, just the stuff of legends. I mean, he leaves, he is forever a Palace legend. And those kind of players are fun to get, especially when they want to be at your club and it matters more to them to be at your club. So from just an emotional fan standpoint, I would love Eberechi Eze to be at Arsenal. From a fit, price, age, data standpoint, I can come around to the idea that there are question marks. Is he definitely a left winger for us? I think he could do it, by the way. The same way Leo, who was kind of a false 9-8, played left wing and was very effective there. I think he could do it. Would he add an option for us to play a second creative 8? Certainly, but then what are you doing with Rice? What are you doing with Kai? What are you doing with Marino? It does get a little complex.
Yeah.
But I just think we need one more half-space final third operator, if you know what I mean. Someone who has that vision to play the little slip ball, to find the little late run, to score a goal from nothing from the top of the box, to arrive in a big moment. And the fact that he really wants to be at Arsenal, I think you would see the absolute best from that player. So you can talk me into other players whose ages are more right or who are more positionally a fit for left wing, like Rodrygo, for example. But in terms of a player, me, as a fan, because that's what I am first, a supporter, right, would love to see at Arsenal, Eze is absolutely it. And yeah, I'd be over the moon if I've been talking about Eze for, as you know, a couple of years now as the player I'd love to see at Arsenal. So what it reminds me of a bit, I adored Aubameyang when he was at Dortmund. And I wanted him at Arsenal. And we got him later than I wanted, but it was still really fun for me to get him. And he won 2 golden boots at Arsenal in the autumn of his career. So yeah, bring me Eze. Yeah.
And an FA Cup, of course, as well for us too.
Yeah. And almost single-handedly, similar to what Eze did for Palace, Oba did that for us against Chelsea and City. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. You know, the Aubameyang story is mythical in so many ways. You know, the how it happened, how it ended, and everything in between. But I agree, Eze, for me, if Arsenal can do that deal, what I'd move to make that happen and to see happen would be great, because I just think it adds another maverick, it adds another match winner, it adds another player that can win Arsenal a game when they're not playing particularly well from absolutely nothing and give us those extra 2 points that would have maybe seen us win a title 2 seasons ago. That the type of players I think Arsenal have lacked, and we've really lent on Bukayo Saka to be that player for us. And I think Gyokeres has those moments in him as well. You know, he doesn't necessarily always have an amazing game, but his ability to strike a ball from anywhere really hard, as we all know, we need players that can hit the ball really hard. Having players in your team that can pop up with a goal from absolutely anywhere is so critical. In a few more minutes, we're going to jump to the chat box as well to take some of your questions too. So if you've got some in the chat box, I can see Elliot just scrolling up and down that chat box in the responses to what people are feeling. You mentioned Rodrygo.
You got to be in the chat, Tom. You got to be, as a podcaster who doesn't do as much live as you do. It's fun to be in the chat.
Yeah, it's a fun. It's how I can do solo shows. If I didn't have these guys, there's no way I could sit at 8 a.m. every morning talking into the nothingness. Thankfully, they filled the nothingness for me and are brilliant. So yes, but we're going to get to some of your questions and chat comments in a few minutes. So start getting them in there. Obviously, use a capital Q. It really does help them stand out. You mentioned Rodrygo in that kind of section there. It almost feels like similar to the Sesko Gyökeres stuff, that it's almost Eze, Rodrygo feel like two sides of the same coin. The likelihood of Arsenal being able to land one, let alone both of those, is not necessarily in the court of it's definitely going to happen or even likely to happen. It's a hope, an aim, a desire for one of those two to come in. The idea that both is near impossible, in my view, to see materializing this summer. But how do you view Rodrygo? If I may, just quickly before you go in, to give you a little breadth of where I see Rodrygo. I came into the summer thinking Rodrygo was a really good player and a player that I'd likened, if it was to happen, to similar to how Alexis Sanchez, when he arrived from Barcelona, I get that sense, or got that sense at the beginning of the window about Rodrygo. As the window has gone on, I can't help but, having witnessed every single day doing this show and seeing people on social media and seeing reports and seeing responses and comments in the chat box about Rodrygo, feel that he has become almost overrated by many of the fans. And actually that this sense that the gap between Rodrygo and our existing options at the moment at left wing is vast. And I don't think it's that vast. I think he is better than what we've got. But this idea that he is transformatively, majorly better than what we already have on the left, I struggle to get to that level that some do. But that's where I am. Tell me where you are.
Let me get you there. So a few things. First of all, I'm not a person who has hate in my heart. It's just not how I'm wired. I love people. I love everybody. I don't think I've ever hated anything as much as Xabi Alonso hates Rodrygo. Okay? Ever. he can't stand the guy, and he doesn't want him at Real Madrid. Real Madrid, let's be clear. They want to keep him. He's going to stay. They don't want him to stay. And I think it is only fair and natural that even myself, and I rate Rodrygo, I think we are all being influenced by the fact that Madrid seems so keen to be shot of this guy and would not use him in the Club World Cup, and just the extent to which he wasn't wanted there and doesn't seem wanted there, I think has led to people downgrading how they rate him. And by the way, I think that's totally natural. It's like, well, gee, they don't seem to like him very much. Why should we?
Yeah.
I think it is also fair to say that the price should come down, because ultimately this is a want-away player that isn't in their plan, that's coming off his worst season at the club. Why should that player go for 90 million? Right? I don't think he should. But here's what I will say. When playing off the left, which he did not get to do this season, he played largely off the right in what I think is a pretty dysfunctional Madrid team that had two forwards that won't press, that won't play for the team. They had a lot of hero ball. Jude is a wonderful player who plays hero ball. Mbappe, Vinny, right? All guys who want to be the guy. And I just think he really struggled in that environment. But the seasons before that, I think he was a stunningly effective player. I think the data shows that. I mean, this is a guy who was taking 3.5 shots per 90, whose expected goals per 90 was good, whose expected assists per 90 was good, you know, and in somewhat limited minutes, 25 starts, 28 starts, was getting you 17 goals and assists, 15 goals and assists, who really performed at Champions League level, by the way, was one of Real Madrid's better Champions League performers a couple seasons ago. And, oh, by the way, they won that thing. I think you'll remember. He's got the experience of winning a Champions League. He's got the experience at a big club. I think, you know, we are building a bit of a Brazilian contingent, so I think he'd have some comfort level there coming in and being with some other Brazilians at Arsenal. But I also think there's just this weird thing with him where I don't think he looks physically imposing the way some athletes do. You know, some players just they're chiseled, you know, the Ronaldo look. He doesn't have that, but I mean, neither did Lionel Messi, to be fair. Yeah. He is a bit. But I think he is so cultured and so elegant. The question is what you want from the left. Do you want a powerhouse dribbler who's going to overwhelm people from the left? I think that's what Chelsea have gone for with like a Jamie Gittins.
Yeah.
Do you want a really technically proficient, elegant player who can get goals for themselves and create goals for others? Rodrygo is more in that camp. I don't think Rodrygo comes in and gets you 20 goals. I don't think that's who he is. But I think what we've lacked with Martinelli, and where I think Martinelli has regressed a bit, is I think he's become very one-dimensional and predictable in how he tries to beat his man. His dribble numbers have cratered, and his creativity numbers have gone down. And in general, I just think we need the technical level at the left wing position to come up. Both Rodrygo and Eze would do that. But Rodrygo is an incredibly, incredibly skillful and talented player who I think, because he's coming off his worst season at Madrid, the price should reflect that. But I think the way he played off the right in a bad Madrid has led people to forget just how good he can be at the top of his game. One last thing I should mention. There are whispers of work ethic concerns. And if that is real, if the way he trains, if the way he works isn't reflective of a committed professional, those are things I don't know. That would certainly be a potential red flag to stay away from, of course.
And certainly one for Arteta, because we know how he, looks at that. There was if you have the time, people go give James McNicholas's piece in The Athletic about Madueke a read. I was just looking into some of the things that have been said about kind of, you'll remember the whole penalty situation, with Chelsea and Madueke's kind of temperament being judged off the back of that. Just one part of the article, he says, for their part, Arsenal undertook background checks on Madueke. They also spoke to the England contingent about him and received really good references about his personality and impact in the dressing room. So for those that have any concern on that front, give James's piece a read. It'll probably put your mind at ease on that front. Just quickly, Rodrygo or Eze, you can have one and only one. Who are you picking?
So
ignore the temperament stuff about Rodrygo that we don't know is true.
The right pick, right? If I'm the sporting director, the right pick is probably Rodrygo, but I don't have to be the sporting director, so I'm going to take Eze. I want to win things now. Yeah. I think whenever you think of transfers, I think this will be a really good heuristic for people to keep in mind for transfers. Instead of saying this player is going to be this, he's going to be this good. What I think we should start to do, and you learn this, I've learned this from people smarter than me though, is talk about range of outcomes, right? Error bars. So like at the low end, what do we think he would be if he hits the lower end of expectation? And at the high end, what would he be? And what's that range? So for example, I think Eze has a much tighter range of outcomes. I don't think he's going to absolutely explode and be the best player in the league in a way that Rodrygo could, but I think the floor outcome is very high. I think Rodrygo could fail at Arsenal. I don't think Eze could fail at Arsenal. And so I think the thing you get with Eze for a team that wants to win right now, and I think is built to win right now, is Premier League experience, a smaller range of outcomes, more predictability, and the desire to be at Arsenal and fight to win for Arsenal. So for me, I'm taking the 27-year-old, even though that may not be, strictly speaking, the right squad building move.
I love the error bar analogy because like I'm visualizing that in my mind, and say you go from 0 to 100 in terms of output. In my mind, I see Rodrygo being 20 to 90 in terms of that. Yeah. And I see Eze being 50 to 80.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yep, that's exactly the way to think about it. Yep.
And I feel there's more chance of getting a lot more, as you point out there, from Eze on a more consistent basis than there is. The upside of Rodrygo may be slightly better than what Eze can bring, but I'm more convinced that I'll get the upside from Eze's arrival than I am Rodrygo's. It's a really nice analogy, that. Just lastly, I think the player that probably that we know the least about in this whole window is the player that's still yet to be announced, Christian Mosquera. I think he's a really important signing for us on that right-hand side. Adds depth to Saliba's position. Kivior's always been there, for Gabriel for the last couple of years, and obviously he needed to be there at the end of last season. Had we have lost Saliba instead of Gabriel, I'm not sure we would have got to a Champions League semi-final because we just don't have that same depth that we had for Gabriel with Kivior. Now Arsenal have a player that can play there. He's also played, and Mikel Arteta will love this, at right back at times for Valencia too. What do you make of this decision and the shrewdness of such a cheap deal for such an exciting young player?
Yeah, I think this is just really smart operating, right? We found a very talented young defender who will come fight to prove his worth, but who doesn't break the bank. And so you get to develop the talent. I think if you profile him, he profiles a lot like Saliba. Very high volume of passes, very good at dribbling, tackling on his feet, right? Doesn't go to ground a lot. Not good in the air, which Saliba had the same issues when he arrived. And I think even to some extent still has a bit of that. But he looks a bit like a Saliba analog in terms of the type of player he is.
Yeah.
And the fee is just fantastic. I mean, this is what you want to be able to do. Address squad needs efficiently with players that have the potential to wind up being an important part of your team. See, this is what I've always said. Don't buy backups. I hate the idea generally of buying backups. And what I mean by buying a backup is a player who has no ability to win the starting job now or in the future, and they are coming to collect a check, right? Yes, Cedric is the quintessential example of a backup, right? He was never going to be good enough to start for Arsenal. He was never going to have ambition to win that job. He was comfortable taking the paycheck. Like, Mosquera may never be good enough for Arsenal. We won't know for sure. But this is a player who is talented and developing and is going to fight to improve his game. And if it works out, Mosquera might someday be starting for Arsenal. And that's what I like to see in a squad, is a group of players fighting to say it's their position. And by the way, you might say, well, what about Norgard? We bought Norgard to be
I just saw that. From Supercat, yeah.
But the interesting thing with Norgard is, I am willing to bet you, did you see what it meant to Norgard when he saw his Arsenal shirt in that car? Did you see what it meant to him when he saw his child wearing the shirt?
Yeah.
I am willing to bet you Christian Norgard in the back of his mind thinks this Zubamendi guy coming from Spain is going to have to learn what the Premier League is about. I know what it's about. I still have a lot to offer. I was captain of Brentford. I'd be willing to bet if you were able to sit down one-on-one with Norgard and said, do you think you can win that position? He'd say, I think I can fight for starting minutes at Arsenal. So, maybe I'm making it a convenient argument for myself. I recognize that. But I don't think, strictly speaking, that's someone who's just going to collect the check and sit on the bench. I think the only area where maybe I'm okay with that, is like a goalkeeper, because there aren't traditionally usually battles for goalkeeping positions. But
no, I don't look at Norgard as a Cedric signing. I look at him as a Jorginho signing, to be honest, and I didn't see Jorginho as a Cedric addition either. For me, I look at the idea of Norgard being a player who comes in, and if we need to make a change to Zubimendi, the gap that we lose in Zubimendi not being there is not a massive gap to Norgard coming in. Whereas when we didn't have Hector Bellerin, I think it was at the start during Cedric's time. I might be wrong, actually. He might have left before Arteta. When did Bellerin leave? Who was our right back at the start of Arteta's tenure? I think it was Bellerin, and Maitland-Niles played. Yeah, Bellerin was there on that right side. And the gap between Bellerin, when he wasn't there, and Cedric was considerable. And Bellerin I never saw as like a world-class right back, although he was a very decent, very good right back. I had a lot of potential that sadly was, curtailed by injury. But the gap between him and Cedric was huge. And we felt that when we had to use Cedric a lot at right back, when he too was not injured as well. So I look at Norgard and think, like you, he is going to come in and offer Arsenal, a lot next season and the seasons to come. Let's jump to the chat box and tackle some of your questions, guys. Mason says, Tom, you definitely know more than you say. Too many coincidences when it's coming to you. Well, don't just pay me for nothing. Joe says, how excited are you to see a potential new style of play now that Zubimendi, Eze and Gyokeres could indeed be joining?
Well, first of all, I love the just assuming Eze is coming. Yeah. I'm all about that.
I added that bit on the end.
I think the key here, let's even take out Eze. The Zubimendi and Gyokeres thing, I think it does a couple of things for us. First of all, I know this is not a new opinion and you've probably heard it elsewhere, but I think Zubimendi has less of a side bias than maybe Thomas Partey did and will open up access to the left-hand side maybe a bit more by being more inclined to play out to the left a little more than we have in the past. And, look, maybe Partey was just following the instruction of that's where we want to build play. But I think it gives us an option to play up that side. Gyökeres gives us something back that Jesus gave us weirdly, which is he is left-sided in his preference. He likes to drift out to that left half space, the left channel, and run those areas. And when Jesus did that, that was really important for Martinelli. They struck up a really good relationship. So maybe the addition of Zubi and Gyökeres, the biggest upside might be getting a little more left to right balance and bringing the left side of our attack back to the forefront a bit. And then the last thing with Zubi and Gyökeres, I think Zubimendi plays the ball quicker when he regains it than Partey does. I think he's quicker to distribute, and Gyökeres is one of the quickest, earliest runners I've seen in terms of the intensity and immediacy with which he makes runs when the ball turns over. And if Zubi has a quicker delivery and Gyökeres has that quick instinct to make runs, I think we may not find mid blocks and low blocks to be quite so difficult anymore, because I think there'll be moments where we regain the ball and test some space that hasn't always been tested in the past.
Yeah, the word I've been using, I think, with the signings that we're making is that Arsenal are increasing their lethality. That's what I look at with Arsenal for next season, is they are hopefully going to be more ruthless in how they attack, and that there will be an extra speed.
Yes, I was just going to say, last season, based on our injuries, I think the only lethality we were testing was literally the lethality of our players, like their ability to stay alive and play football. Yeah,
the lethality of the medical room's capacity
yes, exactly.
was where we were at. Nunandinho says, thoughts on Fabrizio Romano's links with us to Xavi Simons? Would signing him end our interest in Eze? I'm just going to say for now, yes, it would. If you sign Xavi Simons, I don't think we would sign Eze as well. But what are your thoughts on him as an option? I think it seemed from those reports this was something kind of an inquiry made earlier in the window that I don't really foresee materializing into anything, really.
Brilliant player. Enjoy watching him. Really talented. Good pedigree. The price seems to have come all the way down. Maybe even, I think I saw a price like 45 million or something. Yeah. And at that price, you'd be crazy not to consider it, because you're starting to get in that range of, again, that range of outcomes thing. For 45 million, you're getting a guy who could be one of the great hybrid wing fielder type players in the league. at a relatively affordable cost. But I'd still rather Eze for all the reasons I've covered before. I also just feel like this type of player that succeeded in the Bundesliga, I've seen them fail to deliver in the Premier League too often. So I don't know, but anybody that operates effectively in that pocket of space at the top of the box, between the lines, who can deliver a final ball, I'm interested because I think we need more of that. I think I'd just rather have Eze than Xabi Simons. But certainly, to your point, if we were to get him, then we're not getting Eze.
Yeah, that's for sure. There's someone's just pointed something out to me, and that's that if you go on to Getty Images and you type in Madueke, someone's made a little bit of a boo-boo because there's a picture of Christian Mosquera being interviewed at Arsenal, which might be one of the funniest moments. So that's amusing. But yeah, that's it's going viral currently so I'm not revealing anything that's not going to go out anyway.
Is it real or is it photoshopped?
Yeah. It's very real. I'll send you the link to it now so you can have a look for yourself.
Man, there are so many internet sleuths. It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Time.
Do you know what my favorite one has been so far? And again, it comes courtesy of Chris Davison, who's a good friend of mine, of course, and formerly of Football London too, is that there was this image that got leaked of Norgard arriving at Arsenal. Did you see the image that was leaked of him? Someone was sitting in their car and sent it.
And Andrea Berta was giving him the
and you could get the picture they upload of Andrea Berta. You can see he's looking at the guy taking a picture. It's incredible, and I love that. But this goes down as another one of those moments of Arsenal folklore transfers. But yeah, I mean, it's not a shock to anyone. Everyone knew. If it was Gyokeres, obviously that would be very different. But that's rather funny. Let's go into some more of your questions that we've ready. There's a couple on Martinelli. Sweaty Merlin says, do you think the new signings could help Martinelli come back into form? And Jay says, overall, what are your thoughts on Martinelli? For me, last year was the year that he had to step up and show more than what he has offered over the last 2 seasons.
So a few things. I do think Martinelli, when he came back from injury last season, was starting to play better. I think he played a bit better down the stretch. There is no denying that Martinelli's game has stagnated a bit. Now, you could say that that's been related to other factors outside of his control. Lack of access to the left wing, a right side bias, injuries to other players. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons that, he really missed Jesus, who unlocked him. But, players have a responsibility to keep their level high, and I think his level has dipped, and you can see that in a number of metrics. His shots are down, his XG, his XA. His dribbles are way down, and that's an area where I think he has become frustratingly predictable and inefficient in the way he tries to beat a man. I think Martinelli is a very talented player who is undervalued in some corners of our fan base, but also has not done enough to say that we should be committing to him as our top left wing option. Going into this summer, I felt that output from the left wing is our single biggest opportunity to improve. As much as we needed a striker, because we just frankly didn't have enough numerically. If Kai Havertz started 38 games at striker, I think we could be very good. If Martinelli starts 38 games at left wing, I have concerns that he can rediscover the level we need. So I think upgrading is such a negative word. I think adding real elite talent to the left-hand side is important. And if Martinelli raises his level and fights for his place and proves he can get back to his best and wins that position, then that's better for everybody. But I do think that the single biggest area where I've become frustrated with him is a lack of decisiveness and a predictability in the way he attacks defenders when he gets the ball out on the wing. And that has to improve.
Yeah. I have been asking Martinelli to just lift his head up for about 3 years. I mean, 2 years. We'll say 2 years because 3 years ago was a really good season for Martinelli. A really, really good season where he was, that word lethality again, was really appropriate in his campaign. It was, and maybe it's a bit like Ødegaard in some ways because Ødegaard had that campaign where he scored 15 goals. And I don't think Ødegaard will have another season again where he scores 15 Premier League goals personally. I think, not that he's not good enough to do that. It was just an unbelievable goal scoring season for Ødegaard that year. And I think he's capable of getting to double digits, for goals, and should be looking to get into double digits in the Premier League for goals, Ødegaard. But the difference with that and Martinelli is I think that the drop-off from that over the last 2 seasons, not just 1 season in the case of Ødegaard, has been such a drop that it frustrates me for him, because I know there's talent there, and I know, and we can all see it, and he must know it too. He knows the drawbacks in his game, the next step to take, and the likes of Albert Stuvenberg and previously Carlos Cuesta and Miguel Molina and all these assistant coaches that have these one-on-one sessions. I think we can all picture what those one-on-one sessions look like for Martinelli and what he's being advised on a one-on-one basis. I feel for the guy, and I think that there is a chance that this summer, those 2 seasons in particular have led this summer to move Arsenal into a place where they see the left wing now, based upon his outputs, as an area that they have to find the next step.
Can I say one last thing? My strong preference is not to sell him and to move Leo and add someone like Eze. And I think Martinelli would still get plenty of opportunity to play and potentially show his level. I don't want him to move on. I think if we can add to that side and move on Leo, who's now, over 30 and probably at the right time to make one last move, that would be the optimal outcome for me.
Lovely stuff. Dan says, do you feel that we have the quality in every position now with, and we don't like this word, but backups in each position not being much of a drop-off?
This is where I think I have a bit of a heterodox view on squad building, which is
Sorry, what was that word?
Heterodox?
Now, I love words, but this one is a new one for me. So,
well, let's hope I used it.
Heterodox means deviating from or opposed to commonly accepted beliefs or doctrines, particularly. So you're a bit of a hipster, is what you're saying on there.
Well, yeah, because I think if you look at the teams that win stuff, they don't win stuff by using 22 players. Yeah. Really, the teams that win big trophies get fortunate with health. I've never seen a team win a big trophy with an injury crisis. I've never seen someone win the Premier League when their 2 best players are out for 4 months or something. That just doesn't happen. I think Scott posted some stuff that I thought was interesting recently about Liverpool last season, for example. And I'll just read this out to you, okay? They played 56 matches last season. Salah, these are appearances. Salah, 52 of 56. Diaz, 50 of 56. Van Dijk, 49 of 56. Gravenberch, 49 56. McAllister, 49 of 56. Szoboszlai, 49 of 56. Gakpo, 49 of 56. So in other words, of 56 matches, their 2 best players, Salah and Van Dijk, appeared in 52 and 49 of them. And the rest of their most important players appeared in 49 and 56 of them, basically. And Trent would have been up there, but by the time it was clear he was going to Madrid, they kind of stopped using him towards the tail end there. My point is that I want us to have the talent we need to rotate at times and overcome injury. But if you look at Liverpool, at City, when they've won stuff, Haaland played 38 games, Salah played 38 games in the Premier League. So I think you need a rotation of 15 or 16 really good players, any of whom play, you're happy. I think the idea that you need 22 is not right. I mean, PSG is another great example. They played over 60 games this season, and at least in the attack, their rotation was basically 4 players the last 6 months. It was basically Dembele, Kvara, Doué, and Barcola, right? Lee Kang-in didn't play. Who do they have? They have Garcia, I want to say. Anyway, they didn't play anybody else. Or Gonzalo Ramos. Anyway, the point is teams don't rotate as much as we think they do. And if you get injuries, you tend to fail. So I want to see us have elite talent in our first 11 and some elite options behind them. But I'm not as fussed that we have 22 options. Having said that, I do think we look quite deep at the moment. And if we do get an Eze or Rodrygo, I mean, we will certainly, in my estimation, have as deep a squad as any big club around,
Jake adds on to that by saying, do you think with that excellent depth, it gives us a real shot at the domestic cup tournaments this season? I know it's not the trophy people want, but it is always nice to win things.
Well, yeah, I mean, it helps Mikel thread a really difficult needle, right? Because if you don't rotate, people say, Saka got injured because you won't rotate and we don't have enough depth. And if you do rotate and you get knocked out of the FA Cup, people say, why are we chucking the cups? How do you thread that needle? Well, you know how you thread that needle? You play Noni Madueke, you play Christian Norgard, you play Christian Mosquera, you play Martinelli because we've gotten an Eze, right? You play Marino, you play Kai because you've gotten a Gyokeres. And so, yeah, I mean, if we have a front three of Martinelli, Kai, Noni, and a midfield of Marino, Ethan, Norgard, I'd play that in the FA Cup and the League Cup, wouldn't you? So, yeah, it absolutely gives us a better chance. 100%.
Yeah, it's. I think that the depth that Arsenal have, and I know people have done their second 11s quite a lot this summer. I've seen a lot of, and obviously the mock-ups of what Arsenal's 11 when it's posted ahead of a match day fixture, of what it could look like, of course, as well, with the first 11 and what the bench looks like now. And, you know, it is night and day. Last season, when you were having players like, you know, with all due respect, Nathan Butler-Adeji his name gets used quite a lot in these examples, but that's the reality. You know, when those names are popping up on the bench, and Ismail Kabia and, you know, some of these others that have been used to not, you know, especially in the case of Kabia and others, not to play, but just to fill up the names on the bench so we have 9 subs. It harks back to a time at Arsenal where you think by this point in the process, we wouldn't still be having kind of youth kids on the bench. But the reality was that the summer of 2024 didn't add enough quality depth for us that we'd absolutely needed to add. And that is now being caught up on this summer. And I'm really happy about that. So I'll finish off the show, Elliot. Just one more question is, so far, what are your thoughts about Andrea Berta?
Well, you can't argue with the volume of business that's been done. And I think for the most part, you can't argue that he's managed some situations really effectively. So first of all, it is hard to get this much business done in any window, let alone before preseason. So he got some contracts re-signed. Gabriel, done. It looks like Ethan, done. Miles, done. Negotiations that were very important because I'll tell you, whoever we sign this summer, we're not going to sign anyone in defense as good as Gabriel. We're not going to sign any young players exciting as Ethan or Miles. All re-signed, right? Minimal fuss. And it looks like we're in good shape with some of the other signings we need to do. I think in terms of building out the squad depth, look, losing Jorginho meant that we probably need to bring in another midfielder. But it's very clear, whatever we think of it, that at one point in time, the club intended to extend Thomas Partey. And so it was going to be Zubi and Partey. And I think in order to move away from Partey, which was an important thing to do, the club had to have an alternative option. And finding a guy who Spurs were quoted 40 million for, determining that you could get him for less than 10, that he loved the club and wanted to be there. Finding a guy who could be a senior experienced part of the midfield group with Premier League experience, so you're not immediately throwing the Spanish midfielder to the Wolves. Really savvy, quick pivot from what we were planning to do to something different. Got it done quick. Boom, Partey goes, Norgard's in. Zubamendi deal, we all knew that was done, but that's done. The Noni Madueke deal is an interesting one too, because it shows a willingness of Berta to say, okay, Mikel, you seem to really want this, so I'm going to go execute on it for you. Because by all reporting, that's a signing that was driven by Mikel, really rating the player and wanting that player. And so it was very efficiently and effectively completed. He's clearly been able to convince a group that wasn't convinced about Gyokeres that Gyökeres is the right striker for us to go for. Now, if it doesn't work out, that's going to be a blot on his record book, right, on his copy. But I think a sign of a great director of football is he can work with the organization. He can come around to their perspective on certain players like Noni Madueke and execute on that, but also have the trust of the manager to say, trust me on this striker signing, a critical signing. I really rate this guy. I think we can get him at a better value. Let's go get him. And clearly Mikel has trusted that assessment. So all things being equal, Tom, I think he's proven to be a very effective operator. Now it's just going to be a question of, can we make a sale or two that we have to make? Because that's the part we still haven't fully executed on. Right? Vieira's got to go. Can we find Nelson a home? Can we maybe move Leo? Use these outgoings. What are we going to do with Kivior, for example? And use the outgoings to maybe get that one more exciting addition like an Eberechi Eze. But yeah, I think you have to be pretty impressed with what he's done prior to us leaving for preseason.
Yeah, exactly. That was always for me. There was 2 deadlines this season. The first deadline was the preseason flight on the 19th of July. The second deadline was Old Trafford. They were my 2 deadlines. It wasn't the end of the summer. It could be that a signing is done after that Man United game and that we bring Eze in which case I'm not really going to complain because it will be a bonus, you know, if we get Eze through the door. I think we need him, absolutely. But having already brought in your Gyokeres, your Zubamendis, your 4 potential others, you know, Mosquera, we know, is done now because his photo's out there. But when it comes to like the extra 7th signing, you know, that's a real a bonus. And I think that I would be fine if it is to be done, say, on August 29th instead of, I'll be happier, of course, it coming earlier, but if it just make it happen in some way, shape or form, whenever, as long as it's this summer. Elliot, thank you so much for your time, mate. Always an absolute pleasure to catch up and talk with you and chew the cud, as they say, surrounding Arsenal. So tell me where people can find you, what you're going to be up to, and what you got coming up.
Yeah, you bet. So Arsenal Vision podcast out every Monday and Thursday on all the podcasting platforms and on YouTube as well. We've got our Patreon, which has a transfer daily every single day, as the name says. But tonight it has a special edition Friday Night Clive with Clive Palmer. It's already recorded, so that'll be out just after full time here. I get on a plane to go to Singapore on Sunday. So on Tuesday in Singapore on the 22nd, there's a fan event. We'll be there. Andrew from the Arscast will be there as well. I think James McNicholas will be there. It'll be a good live show, and looking forward to meeting people out in Southeast Asia. Won't be able to make Hong Kong, unfortunately, but hope to see people in Singapore. And more than anything, just love chatting with you, love being on this show, and always happy to come back and do it.
Always a pleasure, mate, genuinely. Yeah. And it was a joy to share your 30th birthday in London previously, of course, as well. It was a blast,
wasn't it?
It was a blast. It was a great blast.
A couple drinks were had. I'm glad you were there.
It was a fun one. It was a lot of fun. I've always wondered where that elevator on the outside built by St. Pancras went, and now I know where it goes. So
it's one of those moments where like I had a blast, and then the next day was our Union Chapel live event, and woke up the next morning. I was like, "What have I done to myself?"
I've got to introduce Mikel Arteta to people, and I didn't know it
horrendous. At the time. I didn't know it at the time. Yeah,
indeed. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. I hope you've appreciated this and really liked it and enjoyed it. If you have, of course, do drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you're new. I will be back with you tomorrow morning, bright and early, 8 a.m. UK time, rounding up the signing of Noni Madueke, the unofficial signing of Christian Mosquera, and the latest, of course, of Viktor Gyökeres, of course, as well. We will see you again very soon. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful, and as always, up the Arsenal.